Are you muted? Thought you were going to pray.
Yeah, you can go ahead and pray, and then
I thought you were going to. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I can.
Yeah,
Father in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity for all of us to come together and talk about these things. We just pray that your blessing will be with us and lead and guide us and help us to discover ways to grow food in better and better ways to be able to benefit all of us and those that we contribute to. We just thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Can you bring up her soil test again?
Yes, let me do that. In a second. Can you see it?
Yeah, if you can pull it, if you can scroll it up.
Okay.
That's
Should I
probably good for
continue going
now.
down?
That's probably good for now.
Okay.
I know there's one big thing that I want to bring up. So, Sammy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
We were talking last week. One of the things that I know we didn't mention last week, but I mean, we did mention that phosphorus was probably the biggest link, the weakest link in this was the phosphorus. One of the things we don't know here, because this type of soil test doesn't show us, and it doesn't show us what the potential total is of something in the soil. It's only showing us what's somewhat available. And without a total test, which I'm not sure how easily that is to obtain in your area, I mean, you could actually have a lot higher phosphorus levels in the soil. There might not be, I don't know, but because we just don't have that soil test. But one of the ways ultimately we can try to figure out, is there more phosphorus reserves in the soil test that we don't know about? One of the things that you can do is grow a cover crop of legumes around the forest floor of your mangoes. I don't know if you guys do you guys have sun hemp over there?
No.
Not sun hemp, because I know that's a good one. But anyhow, I'm sure you guys got plenty of legumes, different type of beans or whatever. You might even be able to find some type of bean that you could use as a not only just as a cover crop, but you could actually sell the bean when it is fully mature. Now, a lot of people use a cover crop, especially legumes, to fix nitrogen in the soil. But legumes are also known for having very strong acids in their root system, and they're very known for breaking up phosphorus bonds in the soil with other minerals and freeing up phosphorus in the soil. So what you could do is, like, through the spring and summer, maybe even into the fall, grow some type of legume cover crop throughout that orchard, and then retest next fall and see if those phosphorus levels have spiked. If those phosphorus levels are spiking and coming up a good amount, that's telling you that the legume cover crop is working and it's freeing up phosphorus in there, and there's more phosphorus than what the soil's telling you. It's just that it's all locked up. And a legume cover crop is a good way to free that phosphorus up, and you wouldn't have to pay for a bunch of manure over the long term. You probably want some manure in the short term, but in the long term, you wouldn't have to keep buying manure for phosphorus supplies, because you would have it in the soil. We just don't know without a total soil test if it's actually there or not. So that's one way I would recommend potentially finding out. Just find out what type of legume cover crop might be something that you guys can make money on as well. Is that something that is a possibility in your guys' area, finding some type of legume cover crop?
Yes, we can find beans. We have a lot of beans.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good, because I know it worked. I know something, I mean, my soil already has quite a bit of, just to give you an example, my soil has, like, what did it have? It had like 140 parts per million of phosphorus. So it was on the high end. And another area had 150 parts per million. That was when I tested it last July. Then I planted a cover crop on it. Now this cover crop had a few things in it. It had some tall grass in it. It had sun hemp, legume in it, some sunflower, and some okra in it. And I used some of the AEA's biological products as well. And when I grew that cover crop and retested it in 4 months, my low pH soil jumped up, what was it, 20 parts per million? Because I didn't add any phosphorus, but the cover crop freed up even more phosphorus. It increased it by 20 parts per million. And in my high pH soil, it increased it by 50 to 60 parts per million. And that was just in 4 months. So in my case, I had a total test, so I knew that I had a lot of more phosphorus in there. And I wasn't trying to increase the phosphorus, and I knew that was a potential. But I didn't know that it would jump that much. So that just kind of give you an idea of what's potentially possible. That, because if it did spike 30, 40, 50 points, now you've got your phosphorus up in a normal range, and you'll have mostly fixed that particular problem, because you know that if you go from 1.78 phosphorus to in the 30s or 40s, all of a sudden that phosphorus that's being freed up, it's truly plant available. So that would be a good sign to you, because a lot of times phosphorus is one of those things, like even on my soil test, even though it shows 150 parts per million or 200 parts per million, phosphorus is one of those tricky things that it shows up on the soil test, but it's not necessarily actually plant available. It's still in a locked up form, and your plants can struggle to get it if the biology isn't right. In my case, it seems like it's okay and that the plants are getting it, but in your case, it's just showing either A, that the phosphorus is not there, it's just not in the soil reserves, or B, it is in the soil reserves. It's just that it's so locked up, it's not even getting rid of the soil test. So we got to find a way to free that phosphorus up, so you don't have to keep constantly paying money to put inputs in. And hopefully it's there. Hopefully it's there, and you'll definitely know by growing some, like I said, some legume cover crops. If you don't get some type of spike after growing a legume cover crop and this phosphorus levels, then you know that, okay, we have a different problem. It just doesn't seem like there's any phosphorus reserves in the soil for whatever reason. And that like in my particular case, potassium is something that my soil doesn't have potassium reserves. So potassium is something I always have to address constantly. And in your guys' case, phosphorus would be something that you'd have to address all the time. But once you fix that phosphorus issue in your particular case, I think it's gonna clear up a lot of the issues, as we talked last week. So that's probably like the big thing that I thought of during the week that I wanted to bring up. Sammy, Sammy Wilberforce, do you remember reading about legumes and freeing up phosphorus in Graham Sate's work? You're mute.
I was saying that there are some of the things that we will be looking at when we are looking at the key minerals in 8-part series of Graham material.
You remember coming across that then? Yeah, that's like the big thing. I know we wanted to continue, but that was like the big thing that hit my mind this week about this particular soil test. I mean, we have talked about increasing the calcium. Definitely agree with their. As a matter of fact, Sammy, can you scroll down to where their recommendations are? Let's look at their recommendations for a little bit.
Here we have the first recommendation, and what were they recommending? The crop was about mango. These are the recommendations for the mango. Can you see it?
Yeah, they have calcitic lime on there and dolomite lime, because so they're recommending a little bit of magnesium too, and I would definitely agree with that. Both of those. Do you have now? I'm assuming if they're recommending it, that's something that's available to you guys, both calcitic lime and dolomite lime, and you do know the difference between the two? Sammy, the other Sammy, not Wilberforce.
Calcitic lime, we can find calcitic lime, but the dolomite lime, maybe we ask.
Gotcha.
In the various agrovets around.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's basically, for all practical purposes, as far as liming ability, it's basically the same thing. They're just recommending some of the dolomite lime because of the magnesium percentage is much higher in it. And it still has calcium in it. So you get that, but you get quite a bit of magnesium in it. And that's why they're recommending that. And the soil test does show some need for calcitic lime. I'm sorry, magnesium. And then, so those are the two liming agents to bring the pH up. And as far as the amounts that they recommend, that's something I can't, because I don't know exactly. You have to, when they give you a calculation like that, they're looking at as, okay, how many square feet, or in this case, meters or hectaacres are you dealing with, and how much of it. So you have to figure out the area, the total size of the area, so you can understand how much of something to apply. At least with a cover crop like a legume, it's not an issue of how much material do I need to apply. I just need to plant enough seed to be able to get them roots down everywhere and break up that phosphorus. But that'll probably do one of the best things you can for freeing up phosphorus. And at the same time, by growing that legume, you're going to put nitrogen in the soil. So there's two positives there. It also, nitrogen fixers also will free up iron in the soil as well. There's a bunch of things that legumes will do. Now, certain legumes might do better than others. I'm not real positive on what are the best ones on that. You might want to do some research to find out what type of legumes can free up phosphorus better than others. Now, low soil carbon, it says, is the problem. And they're recommending manure compost for the low soil carbon issue. Now I understood when we talked about the manure or compost, especially if you could find chicken manure, that is a good recommendation for the additional for phosphorus. They're not really recommending it for specifically phosphorus, but I would definitely recommend it for phosphorus. As far as low soil carbon goes, that's your organic matter. Usually putting compost and manures on top of the soil ultimately is not, it's really not going to affect your soil carbon all that terribly much, if at all, because eventually it will eventually just off gas into carbon dioxide in the air, leave the minerals behind. It will leave minerals behind, but it will just disappear on you. It's not in the ground. It has to, in order to impact the soil carbon, it has to be tilled in to the soil, mixed in with the soil. And so the biology has access to it within the soil profile, not on top of it. But obviously you can't really do that with when you're talking about an orchard, because you can't go through and till up all the roots of the trees. You'll damage all the trees. Maybe in some areas of the forest, of the floor, orchard floor, you could, but low soil carbon, the fix for low soil carbon is growing lots of cover crops and stuff like you guys have, or various crops throughout the orchard floor, and letting photosynthesis produce the sugars and dump that into the soil. And if you have plants, obviously you guys had onion plants and you're going to dig those up, pull those up, so you're not leaving the roots behind. But any type of plants where you can leave the roots behind in the soil is going to speed up that process of adding carbon into the actual soil. But the main thing that you're looking for is getting real good carbon in the soil is definitely the root exudates of sugar from your cover crop into the soil. That's going to be by far the best plan for increasing soil carbon in that soil. And then of course that's a process that can take many years to build up to build up a higher level of soil carbon, which in your guys' case, I don't think was too terribly, it wasn't really, it says low soil carbon, but it's not too terribly bad. I think it was 3 point something percent, if I remember right. So that's not like exceptionally bad or anything. That's in the, I would consider that in the at least decent area. And in Florida, you can get some sugar sand that has basically 0% or 0.5%, maybe 1% soil carbon. So yeah, if you can get the compost or manure, like I said before, your best one is going to be chicken manure for the higher phosphorus levels. So if you can get that. If not, you can go with a different type of manure, compost, to apply. I just wouldn't necessarily do it specifically for the carbon, like it says on here in their particular case, because it's just gonna off gas into carbon dioxide in the air and disappear. I'm sure have you ever done that, Sammy Wilberforce or the other Sammy or Zadok? You have some compost or manure laying on top of the soil, and then a year or so later, it's basically gone. It just disappeared. Or just the pile gets smaller and smaller and smaller, just keeps disappearing. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, sure. That's true.
Yeah, it's just going back into carbon dioxide. If you get it mixed in with the soil, that at least allows the biology to work on it, especially fungi, and they might be able to sequester some of that into actual carbon that sticks around for a while. But when it's on top of the soil like that, it pretty much just eventually, we're talking probably 99.9% is just going to turn right back into carbon dioxide. Now it can still have some benefits because it's going to leave its minerals behind. It's going to help with, it will help with the biology on the top layer of the surface of the soil. It will help with weed control if it's thick enough layer. There's various benefits that you can have by putting the compost manure on the top of the soil, but just remember that you just wouldn't want to teach somebody to here, if you have low soil carbon, go ahead and add manure compost every year on top of your soil, because they're going to be doing a lot of work. And year after year, it's like, hey, I dig down into the native soil and it doesn't look any different. And sure enough, it's not going to. So let's look at this last recommendation. I'm not sure can you tell me, Sammy, can you tell me what this means? The 20, when it says 22, 6, 12, is that referring to a fertilizer number like nitrogen, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the 22, 6, 12? Is that what that is saying in this particular case?
Yes, that is what it means.
Okay, that's what I thought. So yeah, so they have a mixed fertilizer here. I'm surprised that the phosphorus level, they only has 6 on here, but maybe they're figuring the compost has some phosphorus in it. You're going to get some potassium from the manure compost as well. Normally, I know he's not here right now. I don't know if he's going to be in here in a second. But Joshua, we typically don't like, when it comes to synthetic fertilizers, here's the problem with particularly potassium. The potassium in a synthetic fertilizer, typically, depending on what, and I don't know what this one is, it says 3S, so that means S plus 3S, that's sulfur. So that's good. And plus B is boron, plus zinc. So that's all good. It must be like a custom blend that this particular company has or something that they can sell, I'm assuming, because you definitely need the sulfur, the boron, and the zinc are definitely going to highly benefit this particular soil. But just letting you know that typically when you're looking at synthetic salt-based fertilizers, the safest out of them is going to be your potassium, so long as it's a potassium sulfate. Probably, yeah, potassium sulfate. Potassium chloride is probably one of the worst salt-based fertilizers you can put down, because the chloride, some of that is going to be converted into chlorine in the soil, and that effectively just basically annihilates your biology in the soil. But so does nitrogen. Synthetic nitrogen like that is very, very harsh on the biology in the soil. It converts to nitrate really quickly in the soil. At least they do have on there, put on 2 applications based on rains. Nitrate is going to leach very fast. Sulfur is going to leach very fast. But your nitrogens are typically pretty rough on the soil. And one of the things that many of us that are studying regenerative agriculture don't like about free nitrogen applications in the soil like this in a non-organic form is you get that nitrogen down into the soil and the biology goes nuts on eating that nitrogen. And if they don't have a food source, if you don't have a crop food source in there for them that's giving them enough, they just start eating all the organic matter. So here in the United States, conventional farming over the years and years has destroyed the organic matter and their topsoil and in the United States because of nitrogen applications. They're feeding that biology nitrogen, and the next thing that biology wants after it eats nitrogen is it needs carbon. And when it doesn't have a good carbon source there, it just starts eating all your organic matter. And so that's what nitrogen does. It basically burns up the organic matter in your soil. So, but you'll definitely get some nitrogen from the manure compost. You will also, as I said, you will get nitrogen from the legume cover crops. And one of the things you could do potentially, depending on what type of legume is, because in order to get the most benefit out of a legume cover crop, if you're wanting that manure, is if it's something that like an alfalfa, people will do hays. I think they might even call it, in some areas of the world, they call it lucerne, and that fixes nitrogen. And you can harvest that product and make it into a hay and sell it as animal feed. And it's going to, every time you harvest it, you are allowing those nitrogen nodules that are building up on the roots in the soil to basically be freed up from the plant, and it becomes more free for your soil biology and for your fruit trees and whatnot in there. So that's a particular crop that is a possibility in your, I don't know if it's in your guys' area. Are you guys familiar with lucerne or alfalfa? Is that something commonly grown over there? Might be a different name, I don't know.
Maybe if we see the pictures of alfalfa, we can know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sammy Wilberforce, can you look up online to see if you can find a picture of alfalfa? Because that's something that would grow. It's a basically, I believe alfalfa is basically a perennial. So you can plant it like one time, I think, and just allow it to grow, keep growing and growing and growing, and then you cut it, harvest it. You can sell the hay for animal feed and whatnot, but that's a possible cover crop. And they have deep roots. But that's a possible cover crop for that might work in this particular case, and you're constantly going to be putting nitrogen down in the soil. So I'm just iffy. I'm always iffy on the nitrogen applications. I don't know if this particular, I can't tell you if their recommendation is too high of an amount, but nitrogen applications from a salt-based fertilizer on the soil can be pretty rough. You'd be better off if you had enough people saving, if you had an irrigation system to be able to irrigate it in a way, using human urine or animal urine. Using urine is a better organic nitrogen source to use, although some people would be like, oh no, you're using human urine. But human urine is actually a very, very good, and it has some phosphorus and some salt, some potassium in it as well. You just got to find a way to be able to apply it. The phosphorus, so where's a good picture there, Sammy?
Oh,
Yeah, basically just turns
you're still looking at Are you still looking at alfalfa?
Yeah, you can bring that up. I can talk about the phosphorus while you're looking for that. I can mention phosphorus. Phosphorus fertilizers, salt-based fertilizers are another thing that they're not the best. They're not a good source usually, because phosphoric acid is usually a conversion of some of that phosphorus, and that's really rough on the biology. With phosphorus fertilizers, salt-based fertilizers. The other thing is, I believe it's right around the course of a few months to 6 months, 73% of your phosphorus that you apply will be locked up. So whatever phosphorus that you apply, only 27% of it is actually what you're going to get for your plant to be available in a short amount of time. The rest of it easily gets locked up in the soil and builds reserves, which might be good if you don't have reserves. But if, like I said, if you do have reserves already, which in most cases, most people do, then you can free them reserves up by a legume cover crop. But yeah, there, I mean, you can see pictures of alfalfa there. Have you ever seen large fields of kind of maybe knee-high, green, bushy plants that people harvest and feed to the animals? If you do, then that's probably alfalfa that's growing in the area. But I don't know. I don't know if it's something that's suitable for your guys' area or not.
I haven't seen it personally. In this area, it's not, they haven't planted it.
Gotcha. Well, it's an option. You can research it to find out if it's something that does well or not. You can look up other. There's obviously other kinds of. There's soybean. Soybean is a legume. I know. I'm assuming you guys probably have soybean over there. So
Yes, we do.
soybean is an option that you can grow, and you can sell the soybean.
What
and
about sweet potatoes as
Sweet
a
potatoes?
cover?
Well,
Yes.
sweet potatoes, as far as I know, are, well, they're not a legume, so they're probably not going to be the best idea in this particular situation, because you're really wanting a specific legume to be able to free up that phosphorus in the soil.
Okay.
I mean, at least this is purely from a, you know, the idea of, hey, we have really bad phosphorus levels in our soil. What are we going to do to increase those phosphorus levels? If you're wanting to use the area for a more profitable crop, you can always do that. You don't have to grow a cover crop like a legume to free up that phosphorus. You can find other ways to get phosphorus in the soil via compost, manures, and stuff like that, and try to build it over time. The reason I'm just suggesting that is so you don't have to potentially, it might say growing some cover crops of legume would save you from having to buy, potentially over the longer term, buy lots and lots of compost and manure all the time and constantly applying that. So it's one of those things. It's like, well, we're going to have to spend money here to get compost and manures, or would we be better off growing a profitable cover crop, or not a cover crop, but a cash crop, and selling that? So that's something you guys have to figure out as a management decision. How do you want to get that phosphorus in the soil? I mean, you can use their recommendation of the salt-based fertilizers, but I'm going to assume that, I don't know, not really assume, but often these salt-based fertilizers are quite tough on the system, and there could be better ways to find out. Although I would definitely try to find some sulfur, some boron, and some zinc. And you could find, like, potassium sulfate, as I said, is one that's not very harsh at all, and that can be sprayed right on the surface, and that's good for the potassium. But phosphorus and nitrogen are ones that are like, I'm not a big fan of. And most people that are trying to regenerate their soil are not a big fan of phosphorus applied fertilizers and nitrogen. And I'm sure Sammy Wilberforce, I'm sure you've come across that in Graham Sate's work, where he talks about nitrogen, some of the issues with, especially phosphorus, adding phosphorus type fertilizers in the soil. I'm sure you've read that, Sammy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, what it does. But I mean, you might
One thing I was
small amounts, maybe even if you've got the manure or the compost down already, and you put it on in, mix it in with that somehow, that would at least buffer it, and you might have a little bit better luck with it that way. Especially if this is like a premixed blend. It just depends on, I mean, you should be able to find zinc, boron, and sulfur in different forms and stuff. Just make sure if you find any sulfur, you don't put down elemental sulfur in this case. Elemental sulfur is your yellow powder, that, or it might come in yellow pills. Elemental sulfur will lower your pH, and you don't want to be lowering your pH anymore. Sulfate, which is the plant available form of sulfur. The plants take it up in sulfate. Sulfate does not mess with your pH. And there's lots of ways you can get sulfate. Sulfates it's very common. Potassium sulfate, magnesium sulfate, zinc sulfate. So you can find all kinds of different fertilizers that have sulfate on it.
just something, Corey.
Yeah.
When I was going through the grammar article, I want to understand, is it that he was saying that the legumes unlock manganese in the soil?
That they what?
They unlock manganese if it is locked in the soil.
I'm not specifically sure about manganese. I know you guys have high levels of manganese, and with a low pH, I'm assuming you're probably going to have plenty of plant available manganese in the soil because it's not being stirred up a lot. You shouldn't have a manganese issue in your situation, but just about any of these type of cover crops will free up a lot of various minerals and stuff. It's just that at least with manganese, because your soil test already reads so high, you probably wouldn't notice it on the soil test. It could definitely benefit your mango trees and your crops about getting it. It's just that you're not going to necessarily notice it on the soil test. And same thing with the phosphorus, as far as it will definitely benefit the trees because, hey, we're able to get phosphorus now because these legumes are freeing it up. But at the same time, you'll know that something is happening when you do the soil test next time. And the soil test shows you, hey, our phosphorus levels have really come up because of these legume cover crops. Their acids are strong enough to free up this phosphorus. And I'm assuming in your guys' case, the phosphorus is your guys' soil in your area often has a reddish color to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sign of oxidized iron. That reddish color is oxidized iron. So you're going to have high reserves of iron. And in low pH environments, phosphorus quickly locks up with iron, becomes iron phosphate. And it's a very, very, especially because oxidized iron has a triple charge, I believe. I'm quite positive it's a triple charge. Phosphorus is a triple charge. So this combination of iron phosphate is very, very strong bond. And that's why if there is lots of phosphorus in the soil test is not picking it up because the acid that they use to extract it is not strong enough to break that bond to find the phosphorus in the soil. That's why the soil test is not showing it. Now, but hopefully the legume cover crop will help break up that bond, and it will help too getting the lime down and getting that pH up in the 6s. 6.4, 6.5. Getting that pH up there will help that phosphorus to be able to be freed up from that iron. But I'll guarantee you, your phosphorus is linked up with iron because there's going to be so much of that oxidized iron in the soil. And that's where it's all at. And I mean, we're hoping that the phosphorus is there in reserves. It's just, I don't know without an actual total soil test, but sometimes that's not easy to find. I mean, even here in the United States, I only know of 2 labs in the entire country. I'm sure there might be more, but I only know of 2 labs in the entire country that do this type of soil test to be able to find out what are the true reserves of this in the soil. So if it's hard to find in the United States, it's probably going to be hard to find out anywhere else too, because we usually have everything available to us.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is this. Graham also recommends, and one of the things that is recommended on cover crops, I can see green beans and yellow sunflower. I can see they are the best being recommended for the cover crops, just in case. Maybe what some can do is one portion of the farm, he does the yellow sunflower, sees how things go on, and another part he does the green beans to see how everything responds, and from that he may know what he can do with his whole farm, what he will consider is the best for the farm.
Right. Yeah. Now I would notice, though you do realize that sunflower is not a legume, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but it does have a deep-rooted system, a big-rooted system. It has its benefits, and if sunflower seeds is something you guys can profit from in your area, it's doing tests of here, like in this area we're going to plant this crop, in this area we're going to plant this crop, in this area this crop, and let's do a soil test in each of these areas afterwards and find out which one is freeing up the phosphorus the best, or freeing up doing what it's doing. Or you can always do tests like that, especially if you have multiple different kinds of legumes, because some legumes are going to be better than others. I would definitely do some research to see if you can find anything about sun hemp. Although sun hemp is not going to have, it's really probably not going to have a bean that is saleable for you, so you wouldn't be able to really make any money on a sun hemp. So you might want to stick with like a soybean or something.
Okay.
That's just something you'll have to figure out.
But also the good thing with the yellow sunflower, it's what do we call it? A pest resistant.
Okay.
Yeah, crop. If you plant it in between the crops, you may achieve somehow the best pest repellent. I mean, it's
right.
Pest repellent. Yeah. Yellow
right.
sunflower.
Just remember, if you're gonna, depending on where you're gonna plant it, it's a tall plant, so it's going to block sunlight.
Yes.
And so if you have a lot of legumes are shorter, are shorter plants, and you want to make sure that they're getting their sunlight.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, definitely look in to the issue of that last fertilizer recommendation down there on particularly the nitrogen and the phosphorus. See what kind of maybe some natural sources of phosphorus you can find. You might be able to find like a bone meal, or there might be some natural. As a matter of fact, I think I just come across something. You guys mentioned the well, you mentioned last week about the what was it? Was it sugarcane? Byproduct of sugarcane?
Yes.
I think if I recall correctly, do some research on that to see if it's high in phosphorus.
Okay.
Because if it's high in phosphorus, that might be definitely a good bonus to put on. You have to, here's one of the things that's important to understand about phosphorus. Phosphorus is not mobile in the soil at all, hardly. It's not like a potassium. You can put your potassium sulfate on the very top of the soil, and rains and everything will leach that into the soil, and it can get down to your plant roots. Phosphorus is just going to sit there right on the very top of the soil. And if it rains and you get heavy rains, it's going to move it on the top of the soil potentially as a runoff, but phosphorus is not going to leach down into the soil. So that's one of the difficulties. It's a bonus for phosphorus because it's not going to leach out on you, but it's also a problem if you're trying to get some available phosphorus into that soil through the top of the soil, because you might have some phosphorus in your manures or various things like that, but unless that plant gets some feeder roots on the top of the soil, the phosphorus doesn't actually get down to the plant. So that's definitely something you have to consider, because now there is one way. If you were going to have a phosphorus source on the very top like that, you could put a mulch on top of the soil, and then that plant will start growing a bunch of roots right up to the top of the surface, and it would get into that manure or compost that you have at the top of the surface. It would start growing surface roots in there, and those surface roots would be protected by that mulch layer. But without the mulch layer, any surface roots are probably going to quickly die off, and they're not going to have much of an access to that phosphorus. Should have said that earlier. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but that phosphorus is not going to be very plant available sitting on top of the surface soil, because the roots aren't going to be able to get to it. That's why, personally, I think your best bet to get phosphorus at least over the long term to these plants is going to be through growing legume cover crops and freeing up and getting some calcium in that soil and getting that pH up, freeing up the phosphorus that's hopefully already there. Now, if you grow some cover crops, some legume cover crops for a year, for 6 months or whatever, and retest, and you don't see any spike at all in your phosphorus levels, then it's like, okay, this might not be working, and you might have to find a different way. Now it is possible. Your guys' mango trees are they're still relatively small. You might be able to till some phosphorus into the soil in some areas, but obviously you have to be careful because of tree roots and stuff like that. You don't want to really harm the trees by tilling too close to that tree. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or other things they want to address or ask about this particular soil test and this particular situation, or something that maybe we haven't covered? You want to go back up to the actual soil test, Sammy, look and see if we missed anything, just in case somebody has some questions about what the soil test is saying to us and what we can learn from it, or what we might want to add or do, or ideas they might have.
I was just looking at the sugarcane byproduct that maybe Sam is saying that they have at their place. One of the byproduct of sugarcane is what we call a press mud. And press mud, we are being told that it contains a significant amount of iron, manganese, calcium, magnesium, silicon, and phosphorus.
Okay. Yeah, the silicon, that's good too. Silicon is something that's usually We don't have silicon on this particular soil test, but silicon has a lot of valuable things in the right amount. It can actually help with the uptake of phosphorus as well. So that's really good. I would say that's a pretty good product.
Another product is Bages, BAGASSE. This one, they say that it contains major portion of cellulose, and its major use is for, it's like a binding material in the soil. So you can think about that when it says binding material. I do not know, I'm not sure what they mean with the binding material. I don't know if you know what they mean by that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Is that coming from the sugarcane or no?
Yeah, this is a byproduct of sugarcane.
Okay, they both are.
It's just it's like an extraction of juice from the sugarcane itself.
Oh,
yeah,
extraction of the juice.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's interesting. Are these byproducts? Are they pretty cheap? Pretty affordable?
No, I don't even know the prices. I was just looking at the byproducts of sugarcane and what they contain. I haven't looked at the prices.
Gotcha.
Yes.
For the press mud, it is free of charge. They just
okay.
For the press mud, they just dispose it along the road, so we just go and pick it.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good. That's if it's got that phosphorus in there, silicon, ferrous, and calcium. I would say that's a good. You can use that as a good compost, or it might. I don't know how quickly that stuff breaks down. Does that product break down very fast and become available to the plant, or does that sit around for a long time?
It breaks down within 3 weeks to 1 month.
Oh, pretty quick then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the only issue is ultimately, like I said, that phosphorus not getting down into the soil very much. It's going to build up in the top layer. So I mean, it's still going to provide some phosphorus to the roots, but it's not going to get deep down into the soil. Now, maybe if you have a lot of earthworms in the soil, and the earthworms are, tilling that soil up for you, you'll get phosphorus down into the soil eventually if you have a good amount of earthworms in the area. That would help. But yeah, as I said, the legume cover crop is probably going to be your best bet to free up phosphorus that's already in the soil. Hopefully it's there. Just trying to find any other. You want to go back up to the actual soil test itself, Sammy, in case anybody has any particular questions about anything specific? Because I know we've really mostly concentrated on phosphorus today, so I'm not sure if anybody. I just want to take one last quick look. Now they didn't address copper levels here, but copper levels could definitely, even though it says 1 to 10 is the range, I know that Graham Sate would probably recommend somewhere between 4 and 8 parts per million of copper. But again, copper is one of those things that it doesn't leach on the soil neither. So adding copper is going to kind of sit on the top of the soil surface a lot. But copper is something that copper is going to be beneficial it has some beneficial aspects to photosynthesis. But this isn't a horrible level at 2.61, but you could definitely probably benefit from it. But it's probably certainly not your weakest link in this particular case. But it's definitely something that is an area where there could be improvement, because it will help out in various. You can research Graham's work materials on copper and what copper does. Even the zinc levels, but they do have that recommendation down there for you to get some zinc in that soil. And typically you would like to see that zinc up there. Well, you want it 10-to-1 with phosphorus, phosphorus being 10. So if you had phosphorus levels of say 50 parts per million, you'd want to see your zinc right around 5. Right now, your zinc is higher than phosphorus, so that's not all that good. You probably might actually want to try to get your phosphorus level up first before. So that may be something. Even though they've recommended adding zinc, you might want to wait on the zinc and try to focus on fixing the phosphorus first, getting that up, seeing where you can get that phosphorus. Can you get it up there to 30 parts per million or 50 parts per million or 60 or whatever? And then that will give you an idea of, okay, we want to see zinc at right around 10-to-1 on that. So if you've got 50 parts per million of phosphorus, then we're looking for 5 parts per million on zinc, because zinc is going to have a big effect on the leaf size. And obviously, the bigger the leaf, the more chlorophyll production you can have, and the more photosynthates, more sugar you're going to feed into the biology of the system. Not to mention there's other things that zinc does. Practically every mineral has multiple things that it can do, but that's something to consider. I personally probably wouldn't, in this particular case, necessarily mess with zinc right at this moment, just until you fix the phosphorus issue, because you don't want to get too zinc seems to be very, very easy to move on the soil test. It's like, wow, I added this much zinc and it seems like it really super spiked my zinc levels. And you don't want to, you get your zinc too high and it will lock up phosphorus and make it hard for your plants to get more phosphorus. And that's what we're trying to fix, is the phosphorus issue. So by concentrating on the phosphorus first, that will give you an idea of what do we got to do with zinc. So you might want to, like I said, you might want to skip zinc for now. But the boron, you definitely want to get that up. And boron is going to be, just so you know, boron is something that it leaches easily. It's as a matter of fact, I've read it is the most leachable mineral in the soil. Boron is. So boron is often something that needs to be sprayed onto the soil, potentially more than likely every year, at least until those levels get up closer to 2 parts per million. But you may even want to do smaller doses of it more frequently, maybe twice a year, 3 times a year. You just got to be careful. You don't want to apply too much at any one time with boron. Boron can be very toxic to your plants. If there's a lot of minerals that in higher doses plants can tolerate it. Boron, especially if the plant is not getting enough calcium, it has a very fine line, they say, between what's good for the plant and when it becomes toxic. And that's mostly related to if boron is getting into the plant and it doesn't have calcium, those new leaves can get burnt and you'll have toxic effects from boron. But so long as you're just being easy on the application rates, and you'll be perfectly fine. Now, this might be something, when you have something like boron here, where it says you have 0.38 parts per million. Let's say you want to see 2 parts per million. 2 parts per million is equivalent to 4 pounds per acre. You just multiply it by 2. I know we've mentioned this before in the past, but some here today might not know that. 4 pounds per acre. Now you can convert that 4 pounds per acre into metric if you want from there. But that would give you an idea that, okay, 4 pounds per acre of actual boron. If we were going to try to apply, and you can apply in this particular case, 4 pounds of boron per acre, find a product that has boron in it, find out what its percentages is, and spray it on with water because it will dissolve pretty easily. And you could apply it at 4 pounds per acre. That's how you would know, like, because a lot of times people just don't know, how do I know how much to apply? And in this particular case, we just convert the parts per million to pounds per acre, which is just simply multiply it by 2. And that gives you go from, okay, we want 2 parts per million. So 2 parts per million times 2 is 4 pounds per acre. And if we did a 4 pounds per acre application of it, in this particular case, mix it in with water, spray that over a 1 acre area, 4 pounds in 1 acre. And that will give you basically 2 parts per million of boron plus what you already have. But I guarantee you, if you tested in a year, much of that would have leached away. And you might find your soil test now says you have a 0.5 part per million or 0.6 parts per million. It depends on various things of the rainfall and whatnot. But I'm sure that if you did 4 pounds per acre, you would not have a toxicity problem. I wouldn't go over 4 pounds per acre. But that's how it works for all of these things. If you're wondering how do I know how much to apply on a per acre basis, you look at how much you got. In this particular case, the boron is, like I said, it's so leachable and you don't have very much. You can just go right to the high end of the guidance and go right with the 4 pounds per acre. If I was looking at copper, that says 2.61 parts per million. So that's 5.2 pounds per acre is what you already have. If you wanted to get that up to 5 parts per million, that's 10 pounds per acre. So basically you're looking at 10 pounds per acre and you have 5, you want to increase it by 5 pounds per acre, which would basically be 2.5 pound parts per million. So you'd add 5 pounds of copper per acre. So you're just taking what you already have in the soil, looking at, okay, what do we want to get this level up to? And figuring out the math from there. Does everybody understand that math? I didn't make that too confusing, did I? With the parts per million over to pounds per acre, and then you can convert it over to metric for your own situation. But does everybody understand that? So they can.
The other time you said you multiply by 2 and then you get the pounds, then you can convert it into kgs, kilograms.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you just always want to make sure when you're figuring out, okay, well, what is the level that we would like to get this up to? And then what do we already have? And then subtract what you already have, and you can get that up there. But boron is something, in most cases, boron is going to be something that, because it's a negative anion, it just doesn't stick around in the soil very well. And there usually isn't a good reserve of boron. That's why it's low. And so boron seems to be something that you might have to yearly deal with, because it's so important, because it's going to help out with getting calcium into that plant. So it's definitely one of the, as far as minor nutrients, boron is definitely one you don't want to neglect. Like I said, you can neglect zinc for the time being, but you probably don't want to neglect the boron. But like I said, boron is leachable, so it can be right on the surface of the soil, and rainwater, irrigation water will leach that boron right into the root zone, and the plants will get it. It's especially in the pH range you guys are at, it's going to be very available. It will definitely help out with your fruit set, bloom. As a matter of fact, I've got some work to do today, and hopefully I'll get to it. I've got a spray on and apply some boron in my fruit trees today and mangoes, because we're getting pretty close to our blooming season for our mangoes, and I know I have a little bit better boron levels than this. I have like 0.7 parts, 0.6 parts per million, but I'm low. So boron is something that I'm going to be adding hopefully today. If not today, sometime this week. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to ask about this particular context, the soil, or anything in general?
Yeah, maybe Sam, is there anything that has not been covered that you will wish to know?
No, all the issues have been covered.
Yes.
Now we will try now and work on the soil and work on the trees, pruning, spraying, and everything. Yeah, thank you very much for the information.
Okay.
Yeah, as I've told Sammy Wilberforce, if you get time, go through. If Sammy, I'm sure Sammy have shared some of the links to Graham Sate's work. You can really learn a lot about these minerals and the interaction and all kinds of stuff. It's like a treasure trove of information on this stuff. And then just get some experience on how to apply it and how to get it. And there's just different things we got to learn. And our everyone's context is unique to their own situation of what they need to do. And work on it and it will get better.
Good.
But overall, I think you guys have a soil here that is very good. I think it's got I think it has a lot of potential in it. I don't know if you know this, Sammy Wilberforce, but Graham Sate has a lot of farms that he's worked with in the years in South Africa.
Yeah.
He's mentioning he's got a lot of farms that he's helped and people in South Africa.
I haven't checked on that.
Yeah, he was talking about, I can't remember. There's a video I was just watching. Maybe I'll send you the link to the video.
Okay.
Where he talks about that. I'm trying to remember what was the. He was basically talking about how, as far as regenerative agriculture goes and biological farming, because you might be able to make some type of connection with them, that these people are, like he said, these people are ahead of everybody in the world in this particular area. They've done so well on their farms.
I'll have to check. When you get the link, please share it with
Yeah.
us.
I'll get you the link to the video. I just found it the other day. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is it. We have just run out of time. It is 1.5 hours past the session. So I don't think we can go into shelf longevity. I think we can start covering that as we go to the key minerals for photosynthesis in the next presentation. When we will be going live again, we will look into details on these minerals that help in photosynthesis. And I know that the Lord will bless us.
Hey, I want to mention something. I just noticed this, and I didn't notice that before. Go down on this soil test. Go down to go down to where it gives you the base saturation percentage. Magnesium 15.5%, calcium 46.6%. I'm trying to understand why they recommended dolomite lime. I would not do the dolomite lime. because you guys have a clay soil more than likely, or if I remember right, no, it's not really clay. It's clay, but you got the loaminess in it. I don't think you want to. Magnesium is going to tighten the soil up, and it's already at 15.5%, which is that's plenty. I would not want that dolomite lime in there. I would just go with a regular calcitic lime, because that percentage on the calcium is way low. You want to get that up 60, 65%. In this particular case, probably 65%. I would not add the magnesium. Your magnesium levels are already up. So I would not, I'm not sure why they're recommending the dolomitic lime. I would try to find just regular lime. I didn't notice that before, that the magnesium levels were that high. And magnesium will make the soil tighter, which is going to hurt oxygen flow and carbon dioxide flow in the soil and hurt your biology. So in this particular case, you want more calcium to flocculate in that soil to allow free gas flow in the soil. So stick with the calcitic lime, not the dolomite.
Okay.
You don't want to add any more magnesium to the soil.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that is it, brethren. And we thank the Lord for that and availing us for this session. We can pray and be able to end at that point. Sammy, are you in a position to pray?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Our Father in heaven, we come before you this afternoon, thanking you for all the gift of life that you have given us, thanking you for opportunities that you have given us to learn. As we continue working on the soils in different places, Lord, may you be with us. May you help us prepare for your second coming and for the time of trouble which is just ahead of us. Forgive us of all our sins, and may you bless all the families that are represented here. And may you guide us, help us to continue learning at your feet. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
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 Okay, God bless you all, and good day, Corey, as you go to the farm, and to the brethren, Zadok and Sami. May the Lord bless your families this afternoon. Bye for now.